Welcome to today's webinar, The Nordic Battery Scene. My name is Nora Rosenberg-Grobeck and I lead the battery ecosystem activities with Innovation Norway and Invest in Norway. Innovation Norway supports the growth of Norwegian companies in Norway and internationally with a wide range of services, financial services and advisory. And Invest in Norway is the investment promotion agency for Norway, focusing on foreign direct investment. If you're interested in learning more, we advise you to check out theexplorer.no, where you can find many interesting companies with green and sustainable solutions from Norway, including the battery ecosystem. The Nordic battery scene is thriving. We see strong national initiatives in the Nordic countries, and when mapping the battery ecosystem in the whole region, we get a strong ecosystem throughout the whole battery value chain. This is super exciting. And that's why one of the reasons why we take a Nordic approach today with representatives from Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We have a varied program with short updates from all the Norwegian cell and battery material projects, inputs from our Swedish neighbors, and many more. Today, we are partnering with Battery Norway, and with me on the digital stage, I have Lars Petter Maltby from Battery Norway, the Eide cluster, and Process 21. Quite a busy guy. Great to sharing the stage with you again today, Lars Petter.
Thank you, Nora. And we are actually sending live from Arendal today, soon to be the center of political activity for the upcoming election. And in addition to what you mentioned, I'm a project manager for the Batman project, and today we will hear two presentations from this activity. We have to start to fill the program, and to start off, what is better than the Minister of Trade and Industry, which will explain her points on the battery scene. And she has been quite busy during the last year with the pandemic, so it's time for her also to think about the battery activities. To follow her, we have Håkon Haugli, CEO of Innovasjon Norge, which will explain how Innovasjon Norge will support battery activity in Norway and the Nordics.
Dear everyone, it's a pleasure for me to address you at this event. I want to offer my gratitude to Innovasjon Norge, Battery Norway and the Batman project for inviting me and for organizing this webinar. It represents a great opportunity to discuss key advantages and possibilities for battery-related industry in the Nordics, and address how the Nordic countries can become key players in the emerging European battery industry. As a key input in green mobility, batteries play a significant part when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We know that demand for batteries will expand rapidly during the next decade. To meet this demand in a sustainable way, we must work together to make the entire value chain low emission, resource efficient and circular. All the way from mineral extraction to the final battery packs, and in the end, recycling. The EU signals high ambitions and standards in its proposal for a new battery regulation. In line with the EU's Green Deal, the aspiration is that batteries and their components will be reduced or recycled, and thereby securing that critical raw materials remain in Europe, enabling a more circular economy. That's good news for Norway and the Nordic countries. We are well equipped to deliver on high ambitions and strict environmental demands. We have transparent, well-regulated industries with high social, ethical and environmental standards. We have good access to renewable energy, and we are home to important producers of many raw materials used in batteries. By taking advantage of this, Norway and the Nordics can realize high value creation and contribute to making the battery industry even more sustainable. As an example, the Norwegian maritime industry is at the forefront of developing new technology and adopting new green solutions. One of those solutions is battery technology. For instance, by 2022, we will have 70 battery ferries in operation, 1/3 of all Norwegian ferries. The Norwegian government wants to facilitate battery production in Norway. During the last couple of years, several companies have shown interest in establishing battery production in Norway. We are seeing the beginning of a new industry arising. If we are to succeed in developing a sustainable and profitable battery production chain, we have to work together across borders. Hydrovolt, the joint venture between Hydro in Norway and the Swedish battery producer Northvolt, is a great example. Hydrovolt is about to establish a factory in Norway for battery recycling. By joining forces like Hydro and Northvolt, the Nordic countries can become a leading region for battery production. As the Nordic countries are small, open economies, we depend on good market access globally. Recently, we became aware that the use of Norwegian-produced batteries in electric cars from 2027 will entail a 10% duty in trade of such cars between the EU and the UK, with the current provisions in the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. The Norwegian government will continue the dialogue with both the EU and the UK to find a solution that allows cars with Norwegian-produced batteries to be traded duty-free between the EU and the UK. Demand for low and zero-emission technology and products is expected to skyrocket over the coming years, representing great opportunities for Nordic companies. By working together, we can take advantage of these opportunities and develop a strong battery industry in the Nordic countries, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and create new green jobs. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister Nybø. It's a great privilege to participate here today. At Innovasjon Norway, we work every day to advance the Norwegian battery ecosystem. During 2020, we have seen a boost in our own activities, which again is a reflection of all the good stuff that is currently going on in the Norwegian battery ecosystem. We've had the honor of providing loans to some of the large initiatives, such as Morrow Batteries, Freyr, Beyonder and Corvus, just to mention a few examples of great initiatives now being taken. What we see is that our environmental technology scheme, as well as the newly established green platform, are appropriate tools. We also see an interest abroad in our international offices targeted towards the Norwegian battery scene, and aim to translate this interest into investments being made in Norway. According to the Norwegian Confederation of Enterprise, the potential is huge, larger than that of the offshore wind industry and the hydrogen industry, which in themselves are important areas of development in Norway. Going forward, we also aim to increase the Nordic partnerships that we currently have with our colleagues and friends in Business Finland and Business Sweden, to advance the Nordics as a green valley, if you like, for industries such as the battery industry. And shortly, my colleague Jan from Business Sweden will go into detail on that. I wish you the very best with this conference, but more importantly, in developing the Norwegian battery industry. On behalf of Innovasjon Norway, I assure you we will be there not just to root for you, but to provide the support that we believe is necessary to make this one of Norway's leading industries of the future. Good luck.
Thank you, Minister Nybø and Håkon. It's fantastic that we have such a strong support system behind us as we embark on the mission of positioning Norway and the Nordics in the growing European ecosystem. And speaking of Europe, next on the agenda, we have Tore Sekkenes. Tore has, since 2019, worked for Inner Energy as European Battery Alliance Program Director, and has vast experience in order to aid the industrial challenges this industry is facing. Please, Tore, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Tore Sekkenes. I lead the European Battery Alliance, also called the EBA 250. That's the industrial arm of this European Battery Alliance. And our common task is to create, to promote and build this the EU battery industry. That is the EU battery industry extending all the way from raw materials all the way to recycling, the whole value chain. First, note to the organizers of this event, thank you very much for letting me speak at this important event. Very appreciated. In my intervention, I would like to highlight three things. First, I would like to say something about the demand for batteries here in Europe versus the EU value chain, the European value chain, the capacity. And the conclusion will be that we still have a lot to do. Then I would like to say something about the Nordic value chain and Norway in particular. And thirdly, come to a conclusion with a summary pointing out the advantages and why Norway should really grasp this opportunity to contribute to the European battery industry. Okay, my first point, I would like to show you a slide that we have put together within EBA 250. It's a busy slide, and so I will explain it shortly. You see two horizontal lines, one with the expected European demand in 2025, and one with the expected EU demand in 2030. These lines are very fluid and they go up all the time, but for the time being, these are our assessments. If the columns show by part of the value chain, raw materials, active materials, battery manufacturing, and so on, how much capacity we know is being planned. And you can see the columns which should reach up to the line, up to the respective line, show you how much is missing. For cell production capacity and applications, we're not that far off here in Europe. But if you look on upstream, raw materials, active materials, and recycling, you see that there's a lot more capacity has to be added into the industry. So conclusion on this slide is we have come a long way in the 4 years that we worked in creating this industry, but we have a lot more to do, especially upstream and recycling. Shifting page to the next page, I would like to say something about the Nordic battery value chain. My responsibility is all of Europe, but the conditions for the battery industry are exceptionally good, especially here in the north of Europe. This image that I have stolen from a report made by Business Sweden, a report called Den Nordiska batterikedjan, shows you examples, there are many more, of how Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish companies can cooperate across the value chain in the different steps. And as I said, these are just examples. There are many more links to be made between the Nordic companies. It's well worth to read this report. Then moving on to the next slide, Norwegian battery ecosystem. This is an image that we put together a year ago, so it needs to be said that for sure things have moved on and there are more additions to the slide. But it gives an impression of all the companies that in some shape or form contribute to the battery industry. You will recognize most of the companies, and for sure there will be others that can be added to this list. Conclusion on this slide is definitely that Norway is already fairly active in the battery industry. Occasionally, I have met the opinion that Norway is not, but this is not my opinion. After this analysis that we did last year, I found that there's a lot of activity going on, and more is of course possible. I'm sure this picture is not complete. Lastly, I would like to summarize, and I think I raised these points. The European battery market is large and growing fast. We have outpaced, in fact, China. We are not at their capacity levels yet, but we are increasing much faster than China at the moment. We are investing much more money than what China is investing, and we are ahead of the North America. So Europe, that 4 years ago thought the game is lost, or we never got into the battery industry and so on. Now the attitude that I meet when I talk to industrial partners out in Europe is that we are becoming the winners. So this is very encouraging, and so the momentum has completely changed. Then, as some of my or one of my slides alluded to, there is still a big gap between the demand and the capacity, especially on raw materials, active materials, and recycling. Lastly, I would like to point out some things about that are particular for Norway, since this is a Norwegian event. And these are the points that I'm sure you're aware of, but I have summarized them on a list. Definitely, Norway is number one on EVs. No question on this point. You have green and relatively inexpensive electric power. This is not the case in many other countries. You have a large experience with chemical process industry. The battery industry is chemical process industry. So you have the workforce, you have the tradition of doing that. You have a mining industry, at least a history, and still some mining ongoing. The graphite industry way up north in Norway is very important for the battery industry. You have a skilled workforce, skilled on innovation, R&D, automation, and productivity. More can be mentioned here. You have customers. Market examples are marine applications, of course. But you have also a tradition of exporting to automakers out there. You have good neighbors. You have Sweden and Finland just beside you, and you can be and you are already a part of the Nordic battery value chain. So together, I'm sure that this can be a much stronger value chain than just the individual countries separately. And for lastly, I'd like to point out something that you take for granted, but it's not for granted in other countries. Norway, in general, is a stable, it's safe and well-financed. This is, of course, what companies appreciate to begin with when they evaluate where they're going to place industry and so on. So you have every chance of attracting foreign investments in Norway. That is for sure. With those words, I thank you very much for letting me speak at this event. Thank you, and I wish you a very good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Tore. It's always a pleasure hearing you speak, and it's a great honor to have you with us today. It's glad to hear that we are on the journey to becoming winners in Europe. The EU is committed to ensuring a comprehensive value chain in Europe. Batteries will play an essential role delivering the EU's strategic objectives of industrial competitiveness, decarbonization of the economy, and increased resilience and strategic autonomy in critical industrial sectors. This is one of them. We believe that a strong collaboration can give the Nordic countries a unique position, contributing to build a strong, sustainable European battery value chain. Therefore, next on the digital stage, we have Jan Larsson, the new CEO of Business Sweden, who will share some insights to their current project given to them by the Swedish Department of Energy. But before Jan continues the show, we have a short message from the CEO of Freyr, Tom Jensen, and the CEO of Beyonder, Svein Kvernstuen. Thank you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you very much to Innovasjon Norge for inviting Freyr into yet another important event talking about the Nordic battery scene. It is increasingly clear when we look at and hear from different commentators and estimators around the world that the world urgently needs to decarbonize in a very short order. Both Norway, Europe, and the United States now have ambitions to cut CO2 emissions in half by 2030. That is impossible without a full transformation of the transportation systems and energy systems globally. That is equally impossible if we don't deploy large amounts of batteries to support the decarbonization of transportation, which is obvious, eliminating the tailpipe, but increasingly important is batteries' role in catalyzing increased penetration of renewable energy into energy systems globally. Both of these transformational challenges will require large amounts of batteries. And even the International Energy Agency are now predicting that to stay within a 1.5 degree climate boundary as set forth in the Paris Agreement, we need to deploy 6.6 terawatt hours annually of batteries by 2030. That's only for transportation. Rystad Energy is estimating that to reach the Biden plan, the United States need 1.8 terawatt hours of batteries to decarbonize their power sector by 2030. And the list goes on and on. The point is, to decarbonize these sectors requires decarbonized batteries from the outset. And this is where Norway plays a fundamentally important role. Norway has abundant, low-cost, clean electricity. And we have a lot of raw materials and an increasing amount of competence to deploy battery solutions at scale. Freyr has been working on this agenda since 2017, and we are getting ready to start Norway's first lithium-ion battery facilities in Mo i Rana in 2022. We have made massive progress in our development plans, and we announced in January this year that we are going public on the New York Stock Exchange to raise $850 million to allow us to move forward at pace. Freyr's strategy is built up around speed, scale, and sustainability. And all of these three things need to be balanced in order for a battery player to succeed. We have been moving forward at pace. We have broad interest across the entire value chain, from raw material providers to active material producers to customers, technology providers, and recycling companies. All see the benefit of the emerging Nordic battery ecosystem. And Norway could have bold ambitions in this regard. And Freyr want to applaud all initiatives across the entire value chain in Norway to basically make Norway one of the core areas for battery production globally. There is no doubt in Freyr's mind that Norway could develop several hundred gigawatt hours of capacity already by 2030 and establish a localized supply chain to support that. Not only do we have on land quite a lot of relevant material for battery cell production beyond the low-cost green electricity, but as you also look out into the North Sea, we have large deposits of very high concentrations of relevant critical elements for battery cell production. A lot of stakeholders, again, along the value chain are now in dialogue with Freyr to come to Norway to establish a decarbonized supply chain. Freyr aims to have the lowest carbon footprint on batteries in the world, and in short order, we will establish localized supply chains to have a more than 80% reduction in CO2 footprint for the entire value chain. Again, more than 50 customer engagements are now showing very deep interest in very large volumes of decarbonized batteries, and we are super excited to be leading the charge in Norway's battery scene. We thank again Innovasjon Norge and all our partners and competitors along the value chain for establishing this extremely exciting industry. And we invite everyone who wants to participate with Freyr and work with Freyr to really develop the best and possibly largest industry Norway has seen in many, many decades. And we are open for business. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Innovasjon Norge, Battery Norway, and Batman for this opportunity to present Beyonder and our status. My name is Svein Kranstø. I'm the founder and CEO of Beyonder. We are an energetic technology company that develop and produce sustainable solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Located in Forus, outside Stavanger, in Norway's largest business area, we have established a state-of-the-art battery center. Conventional lithium-ion batteries have enabled personal mobility. To electrify heavy transport and industry, we need energy storage solutions with our performances. High power to start large machines and for heavy lifts. Fast response to handle the rapid peaks in our grid when we are electrifying and introducing renewable fluctuating energy mix. Long lifetime to allow multiple charging per day. And reduce charge time to infinite charge with less than 2 minutes. And a improved safety. We in Beyonder have developed our own technology, a patented process of making world-best activated carbon from low-cost forest residues from the Norwegian forest industry, replacing challenging and costly materials such as cobalt and nickel. We've developed a new and tailor-made battery cell production method, meeting reducing the energy and the use of toxic chemicals, and a product tailor-made to meet the requirement from the industry and the heavy transport. And we've started production. Beyonder is the first player in Norway that has established now machined battery cell production. We have a production prototype line at roughly 1,000 square meters with machines that we opened up here in March 2021. We are now roughly 50 employees and rapidly growing to roughly 100 end of this year. And we will, in 1 year time from now, have established a fully automatic pilot production line to produce several thousand cells per day. We are also planning to establish a full-scale production facility in Norway, utilizing the clean hydropower that we have here. So with that, Beyonder is established to sustainability and beyond. Thank you.
Dear Minister Nybø, dear Håkon, my colleague, dear Mr. Sekkenes, and dear colleagues within the Nordic battery industry. Please let me start by saying thank you to Innovasjon Norge for arranging this important webinar where we can continue the Nordic battery dialogue. My name is Larsson. I'm the CEO of Business Sweden. Business Sweden is the official Swedish Trade and Investment Council, and we help Swedish companies grow global sales and international companies invest and expand in Sweden. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered the decade of sustainable action. Technology shifts and investments are accelerating at an impressive pace, partly in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and zero carbon dioxide emission targets, the political side, but even more importantly, to meet consumers' demand. The speed of transformation is set by millions and millions of consumers who are determined to stop global warming and build a better global village. And when people across continents join forces in their consumption, a powerful force is set in motion. From that perspective, the vision set out by the Nordic Council of Ministers is very insightful: to become the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030 is not only good for the planet, it is also good for growth, innovation, and jobs in our part of the world. To reach that vision, it is hard to see anything more important than electrification, and that is happening as we meet here. Transportation alone is responsible for 24% of direct CO2 emissions. That will be changed by electrification. And that will lead to an immense increase in global battery need. The forecasts are breathtaking, from about 300 gigawatt hours today to 2,600 in 2030. A factor of 10 in less than 10 years. The key driver is the global increase of electrical vehicles as a share of sold passenger cars, from 7% in 2020 to 58% in 2040. The battery is the single most important and expensive component of an electric passenger car, accounting for up to 35 to 45% of the total cost of the car. Currently, Asian players dominate that market, the battery industry, but the global market structure is changing fast. Europe is doing okay, still ahead of the US, but with the Biden administration, electric vehicles and charging infrastructure is surging. There is already a tremendous activity in Europe to start building the European battery value chain. The European market is driving the development for green batteries. To solve sustainability issues with non-sustainable production will not impress the consumers. Therefore, batteries placed on the EU market should or even must be sustainable, high-performing and safe all along the entire life cycle. That makes the Nordics very well positioned to take a leading role for sustainable batteries in Europe and globally. The list of our advantages is long. We have reliable fossil-free energy, we have advanced industrial R&D capabilities, we have skilled engineering expertise, we have know-how in sustainable mining, we have access to raw materials, and we have major investments in recycling. Therefore, in December 2020, Business Sweden joined forces with the Swedish Energy Agency to evaluate a competitive and integrated Nordic battery ecosystem. In March of this year, we launched a report mapping stakeholders' investment case drivers. The conclusion is clear. We have many innovative players in the Nordics, from anchor companies to startups. They have the knowledge and capacity to build a powerful, competitive and green battery value chain. We are now looking into the ambitions set up by the battery industry itself, and after the summer we will present our findings on the goals and how to reach them. I am delighted that we can meet these opportunities as a joint Nordic team. On April 27th, Innovasjon Norway, Business Finland and Business Sweden signed a letter of intent for Nordic collaboration in trade promotion. We are already collaborating in Nordic innovation houses in Silicon Valley, in New York, in Hong Kong, in Singapore and in Tokyo. We have agreed now to work closely together in initiatives where we can make 1 + 1 + 1 much larger than 3. I hope this meeting will be yet another milestone in that collaboration, because, as you know, competition within the Nordic makes us better, and collaboration within the Nordics makes us stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think that was very inspiring words, and also related to what Tore said, we can become winners, and I think a collaboration in the Nordics will make that possible. The battery scene is a competitive landscape as well. We've seen over the last few years trade barriers between China and US. The European Green Deal outlines the strategic autonomy as a expression. To elaborate a little bit on this, we have Associate Professor Stina Torjussen at the University of Agder to tell us a little bit about her thoughts about strategic autonomy within the battery sphere. So Stina is also the work package leader for the Batman project on the regulations and political recommendations. So it is titled Do Batteries Enhance Europe's Quest for Open Strategic Economy?
In this short presentation, I'm asking the question, do batteries enhance Europe's quest for open strategic autonomy? The easy answer here is yes, they do. The more interesting question is how, and what does that mean for the future development of the European battery sector? Before we start, let's just remind ourselves, what world are we living in? I think we live in a world that is defined by the strategic rivalry between the US and China. The many decades of high Chinese growth rates really mean that the US and the Chinese economy now are more or less equal in size. Moreover, under Xi Jinping's leadership, we have seen that China has become much more assertive on the global stage. The US woke up to the challenge posed by China under the Trump presidency, but the Biden administration is equally concerned. In effect, what we have is a battle being played out between the US and China for technological, economic, and political supremacy. In the context of this seminar, this means two things. First, Europe needs to kind of position itself in relation to this, and we'll look at that. Also, we see that some key business sectors are becoming more politically important. Cyber, the development of the 5G network are obvious examples, but batteries have also taken on strategic significance, albeit in a different way. If we look at the origins of this concept, open strategic autonomy, we see that it stems really from the defense sector, and it's closely associated with President Macron and his strategic vision. Macron is worried that the EU will be dominated by China or the US if it does not build capacities to take decisions, think strategically, and act militarily. Angela Merkel and Germany are also sharing this vision, although there are some slight differences between the two. But by and large, when we look at open strategic autonomy, there is a consensus and a commitment to maintaining independence vis-à-vis China and the US, build European capacity to assert itself, for example, building capacities to enforce trade rules or manage conflict, increase self-reliance but not protectionism, and there's a commitment to an open rules-based order and continued global economic integration. I should also note that the idea of open strategic autonomy is closely linked with the European Green Deal, although I won't go into detail in this presentation on that interplay between these two items. Let's instead look more specifically at the battery sector. If we have open as the starting point, we will see that Europe has an agenda now to reform and strengthen the WTO. They will be mainstreaming climate as much as they can into trade agreements, including into the WTO system. And that may mean that the EU will create more space for a carbon border adjustment mechanism to be launched. And if that is the case, we know, of course, that this will be beneficial for the new green battery industry that is emerging. Secondly, under the open heading, we should recognize that the US and China produced batteries are very much welcome into the European market as long as they are complying with what will now be very tough environmental standards. Moreover, we are seeing that the US and Chinese investments are very much welcome into the European market. And if we look at the 16 factories that are being planned or are already in operation, we see that there is a big, in fact, 8 of these factories have a big Asian component, either in the form of a joint venture or a tight collaborative relationship. And that is very much welcome, I think, in Europe. When we look at the strategic dimension, there is a general emphasis that Europe should not be outcompeted by China in major industries, including the car industry, which is hugely important for the European economy and a major generator of jobs and welfare. So Europe really wants to make sure that it is not outcompeted, and in order to do that, they need a thriving European battery sector to maintain its competitive advantage. Secondly, I think we should note that Europe will need to, or would want to, ensure that we can match Asian levels of research and innovation. There will be an emphasis on understanding China's growth. And I think in general as well, in the kind of broader picture, Europe will try to navigate the US-China strategic rivalry and maintain open to business with China whenever politically feasible, including, of course, in the battery sector. When it comes to the final element, autonomy, this is in a sense perhaps the most obvious part. Access to raw material is a huge issue now within the batteries sector. Europe is working hard to diversify its supply and also build supply from within the European continent. There are emphasis on research, massive funding being plowed into research, including into research that will give us new battery technologies where we can counter scarcity, where we can, for example, reduce the level of cobalt into new batteries, which would help in terms of scarcity and supply issues. There is also an emphasis on increasing capacity, as you know, in production, in refinery, and moving forward, there will also be emphasis on lessening the shipping of old batteries to Asia for recycling, but instead try to hold on to these batteries in Europe and build a circular battery value chain around them within Europe. And having that secondary raw material continuously circulating in the European battery market. Now, when it comes to the autonomy part, I think we should be realistic. We're very much we're a long way away from seeing a European autonomy. In this graph taken from the new industrial strategy that was updated in May, you see China in red being the key player across the value chain and Europe in blue playing a very minor role. But what can we expect in the 2020s? Well, we will see cell production advance, perhaps to 16% of global production or over. European production will be able to meet European demand by 2025. At least these are the forecasts put forward by European Commission leaders such as Maros Šefčovič. And we will see that Europe will become more, albeit perhaps not fully, self-reliant in the battery sector. This means that batteries do indeed enhance Europe's quest for open strategic autonomy. I think, again, they are really closely linked, and I think the developments in the European battery sector really ties nicely in with the open strategic autonomy concept. There are also more specific activities that we can mention. Let's not dig into that, but really just kind of wrap up this presentation by saying that what I've discussed here really are signs, I think, that capitalism itself is changing. Market dynamics are infused with strategic considerations. Much of the old logic still applies, but there are important twists. With batteries, there is a willingness to regulate the sector more carefully and allocate large sums of public funding so that Europe can advance in the global battery race. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stina. So from politics back to industry. You have heard earlier from Freyr and Beyonder, and now we will go to Sweden and hear from the locomotive, I would say, in the Nordics, in Northvolt. So they started 2017, and recently today, actually, we heard yet another $2.75 billion equity raise. So Jesper Vigard, Vice President of Communication and Public Affairs, will explain us the recent developments. But we also have a newcomer that we will start up with. So in 2020, Morrow Batteries started here in Arendal. And we will hear CEO Terje Andersen explain about the status of their activity.
I will try to give you a short update where we are and how we are moving Morrow forward. First of all, I will say that we have a very clear ambition and vision. We are here to develop and manufacture the most cost-effective and sustainable battery in the world. We have signed a fantastic plot just outside Arendal with access to 100% hydropower. This is a compact solution with all the infrastructure we need. We have great access to logistics hubs nearby, like a deep sea harbor, only 5 kilometers away. That makes us much closer to our key customers than most of our competitors. We are working shoulder by shoulder with the local government and obtain strong support. This was one of the key reasons why we selected Agder region in the midst of what we are branding as Battery Coast. An example on this support is that the university in Agder, together with Equinor, Elkem, Glencore and Morrow, are, as we speak, creating a very strong battery research team that consists of several professors, research and PhD positions, and a 7 million euro project is kicked off to make this happen. Being the most cost-effective and in parallel reducing the carbon footprint will be the key to the key innovation driver for the coming decade. In addition to reducing the material cost and vertical integration, we are focusing both downstream and upstream, and we are exploring state-of-the-art manufacturing technologies to drive the green transformation and the cost down. And we are working with several key partners like Siemens ABB. And to give one more example, I will point at the work we are doing with leading chemical companies like Haldor Topsoe and Elkem on the battery active materials. Haldor Topsoe is a Danish well-known chemical company with a long tradition on R&D. We are working with Haldor Topsoe to be able to execute on the new technology named LNMO, basically taking out cobalt, reducing cobalt with manganese, and also reducing the costly nickel. That will take us down at least 30% of costs, and we also are able to have the same energy density. So that is, and by the way, both Tesla and Volkswagen have announced LNMO as one of the key battery technology to come. I will say the market is booming, and it's quite difficult for us to have a very clear numbers. Every second month, the market is moving up. We can see a delta, and we can see the issue that all the battery initiative in Europe, as we speak, if you add them all together, will not be able to, in a way, fulfill the requirements or the need. So at least we will be able to support 42 gigawatt hour with our gigafactory in the Agder region. We will be up running full scale in 26. we will have our Morrow industrialization already established in 23-24 with the capacity on our pilot factory on 0.6 gigawatt hour. That means that will be key to us to certificate Morrow as a supplier to the EV cars, but also be able to produce small-scale battery to several other market segments. As we speak, we are talking to marine, ESS installations, tooling, and others. But no secret about that, we are also moving into a certification process with automotive industry. Our Morrow industrialization will be located partly in Grimstad, where we will have our battery innovation center, and our pilot factory will be established close to our gigafactory at Eide Industripark. And our CAM pilot will be also established in that area. So this will be a compact solution that will meet all the requirements from the business. I'm looking very much forward to the journey and tell you more when we have started to deliver on our plans. Thank you.
When Northvolt founders Peter Carlson and Paolo Cerruti met back in Palo Alto in 2011, they were building up the supply chain for Tesla, what was going to be the Model S. And they quickly realized that around 40% of the entire value of the electric cars that they were building were sitting in the battery. And they also quickly realized that the demand they saw far outweighed the supply of batteries available at that point in time. Being European, both of them, they obviously started to look towards Europe, which is a part of the world where we create roughly 20 million vehicles per year, where we have 13 or 14 million people working in this industry. And they asked themselves, what's going to happen to Europe when all of these cars are going to become electric at some point? Because they were pretty sure already back then that that was going to happen. I joined Northvolt about 4 years ago. I think I was employee number 12 to come on board. And we were at that point nothing but an idea, a pretty good idea, but still an idea on a PowerPoint. And the basic premise on which we were founded was that we wanted to enable the European transition to electrification while building battery cells with a very low CO2 footprint, leveraging clean energy, hydropower, not least, that we have available here in Sweden, similar to what you have in Norway, of course. Since this launch in 2017, the Northvolt team has grown to about 2,000 people. We come from 85 different nationalities. We have started up our first factory, which we call Northvolt Labs, in a place called Västerås outside of Stockholm. And Northvolt Labs is a 20,000 square meter state-of-the-art facility that has now been up and running for about a year, producing cells to our customers. We have been fortunate to have a number of world-class investors like Goldman Sachs and customers as well, such as Volkswagen and BMW come on board this journey. And we have today raised more than $6.5 billion in both equity and debt to support our plans. And we have secured a combined order from our customers worth over $27 billion over the next 10 years. Most of these volumes are going to come from this factory behind me. Hopefully you can see that. We call it Northvolt 1, and it is located in Skellefteå in the northern parts of Sweden. This factory will start production later this year. But we already now see a need to build most likely at least 1 or 2 more of these types of factories in Europe over the coming years to support our plans, which is to build roughly 150 gigawatt hours of capacity in 2030. And we think that would be the equivalent to roughly a 20 to 25% market share in Europe at that point. as you know, the momentum for this industry is tremendous. And we now know that this is going to become a regional European industry, because that was one of the main points of criticism when Peter and Paolo launched Northvolt 4 or 5 years ago. Then the question was, isn't the OEMs just going to get their batteries shipped here from Asia? And we now know that this is not the case. This is going to become a regional industry. But the big remaining question is obviously whether this will be a fully European value chain or not. And again, going back to the 40% figure that I mentioned in the beginning, that 40% of the value in an EV sits in the battery, there's obviously a major difference between a scenario where we see mostly Asian satellite production factories being built in Europe with R&D, with components manufacturing, machine suppliers, raw materials, etc., being provided from Asia, and a scenario which also include European players in this supply chain. And the fact is, if the majority of the value is being created somewhere else, it will be a major loss for Europe, both in terms of jobs and investments, of course. So from our point of view, it's pretty clear that we need to build a fully European value chain from the ground up. We also need the Asian manufacturers to come here, obviously, and the suppliers along that value chain to come here and set up shop and help building this industry. But we need European actors here as well. And we need them from all the way from mining and refining to component and equipment manufacturing to R&D and product development and all the way to giga-scale production and also recycling, obviously. And as Northvolt, we can obviously not do this ourselves. That would be pretty naive of us to think. So we're happy to see what's now starting to happen around Europe, and particularly, satisfying to see that there's a lot happening in Norway currently. And, leveraging the same industrial logic around clean energy that we have been able to do in Sweden, Norway is obviously very well positioned when it comes to this industry, with, battery production obviously being a tremendously energy intensive process, but also several steps in other places of the supply chain have a similar logic, I would say. So Norway is very well suited to take a part in this transition and take a part in this value chain. And we obviously look forward to cooperating across the border over the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesper. Always a pleasure to have you with us. We are moving over to the next neighbor, Finland. And to represent Finland, we have Christian Rüdiger from Johnson Matthey. And Johnson Matthey recently announced a strategic partnership with Finnish Minerals Group to locate a commercial plant for cathode materials in Finland. That sounds awesome. We're excited to hear more about the plans. We have Christian Rüdiger. But first, we have a message from Stian Matshus and a newly formed company from Elkem called Vianode. So here you go. Stian.
Thank you very much for the invitation to introduce Vianode. Elkem has recently established Vianode as a new company and brand dedicated to strategic growth opportunities for advanced battery materials. My name is Stian Matshus and I'm the General Manager Europe in Vianode. The anode graphite, which Vianode produces, is a highly engineered advanced material which makes up about 15% of the battery cell. It is a critical material that is tailor-made to specific applications and strongly influences properties such as energy density, how far you can drive on a charge, how fast you can charge your battery, how long the battery will last, and there are also important safety aspects. There are massive plans to establish new cell manufacturing capacity in Europe and North America, but the supply of critical battery anode materials is totally dominated by Asian players and mainly Chinese. Around 1 million tons of anode graphite is needed annually by 2030 to support 1,000 gigawatt hours of cell production capacity. This is a local supply chain that has to be established unless Europe wants to be dependent on imports from Asia, materials that often come with a significant environmental footprint. The issue with today's production of synthetic graphite is that the current ways of production are not very sustainable. On the left, you see the Atchison furnace, which is an open type furnace, which is the dominating technology today. There are issues with emissions like sulfur, dust, and the CO2 footprint is very high. We have recently performed a life cycle assessment, and it shows that the global warming potential of anode graphite production can be above 20 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram of product. This is a substantial contribution to the battery overall CO2 footprint. It is about more efficient processes, using less energy, and it's about using clean energy. And of course, cleaning of gases from the process. This is where Vinode wants to contribute. We can reduce emissions by more than 90%. This is creating a lot of interest. We have recently started our industrial pilot in Kristiansand, Norway. The capacity is 200 tons per year. Here we are producing material for customer qualification and train our operations team. In parallel, we are planning the Herøya large-scale facility. The capacity is 50,000 tons annually when complete. This can serve 50 gigawatt hours of battery cell production capacity, which is enough batteries for 700 to 800,000 cars. There is certainly a need for sustainable localized supply of high-performance anode materials. Vinode has a strong foundation in Elkem and commitment to enter this market and create significant value. We do see great interest for our development. Vinode is uniquely positioned to supply solutions to the battery industry, meeting today's challenges and tomorrow's opportunities. Like a famous US-based EV entrepreneur phrased it, we don't do things differently just because they're different. We want to do it better and to contribute to making battery production greener and sustainable. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Christian Rüdiger and today I'm going to present Johnson Matthey Battery Materials and will talk you through our strategy to establish a eLNO cathode manufacturing plant in Europe. Below you will find my email address, so please feel free to contact me afterwards. Johnson Matthey is a FTSE 100 UK listed company and basically is a sustainable technology company with over 200 years of experience. The main market of Johnson Matthey are automotive catalytic converters, and beside standard catalyst products for the chemical and petrochemical industry up to hydrogen and battery materials and furthermore applications. Johnson Matthey is doing businesses where we do have number 1 or number 2 leadership in our chosen markets, and furthermore you're seeing the financial results of the last year performance. Today I would like to talk about battery materials. Johnson Matthey is active in the entire value chain in terms of taking raw materials from refineries and doing cathode materials out of that one. In the top you can see our full portfolio of cathode materials. We have a nickel-late material in our portfolio, which we call eLNO, which is a high nickel but low cobalt offering, which I would like to focus today. Furthermore, we have other cathode materials like LFP and LMFP versions available, and also high voltage spinel materials, but these are not my focus of my talk today. Furthermore, Johnson Matthey is also focusing recycling activities as well, so please feel free to reach me out if you have interested in the other topics which are not mentioned today. Our battery material strategy. On the next slides, I would like to talk you through the technology, sustainability, and supply chain roadmap for our eLNO manufacturing in Europe. First of all, what is eLNO? eLNO is a bespoke cathode material which is competing against other high nickel late materials like NMC 811 or advanced NCA. It's a layered nickel-rich oxide structure, and basically the chemistry and the composition is stabilized by a stabilizer package using different dopants and also novel surface modifications. How is the performance of eLNO compared to the benchmarks? On this slide, you see the first generation of our eLNO compared to an NMC 811 benchmark, a material which is already commercially available on the market. As you see, eLNO is starting at slightly higher specific capacity and ending over 1,500 cycles at the same, almost same, but slightly higher retention. So the key message is our eLNO material is competitive to standard NMC 811 materials in the market. But we are not stopping here, so we are further developing eLNO. And our second generation of eLNO, where we are treating or have treated the material with a novel surface coating to further reduce, for example, the cobalt content, is improved by the capacity retention over 500 cycles. So the key message is eLNO is not one single material offering. eLNO is a family of materials which we can bespoke and further optimizing in terms of our customer needs. Key to further develop our cathode materials are our battery technology centers. And recently we have opened our newest state-of-the-art battery technology center in Oxford in the UK to produce batteries by ourselves with the aim to further improve cathode materials. So basically, Johnson Matthey is able to manufacture small batteries, to investigate these ones, to do all the battery material testing, to talk with our customers on the same competence level to further improve our offerings and to help our customers to meet their performances. In terms of commercialization, eLNO is currently under commercialization. So we're talking to all the cell manufacturers and car OEMs worldwide. Lately, we also announced a strategic partnership with the company Envision. Envision is also owning a racing team, and together with the racing team, we are currently co-developing a concept car, which is a two-seater, which will be powered by eLNO. So the racing car will be the first automotive with eLNO material in action, and we believe this will be ready already this year. So basically, we want to showcase that one on COP26 in Glasgow in November this year. How our sustainability roadmap for eLNO looks like. Our aim is to get in 2035 at the latest into carbon neutral eLNO manufacturing. To get there, we have different milestones, which you can see on the slide. First, we are starting with responsible sourcing of the critical raw materials, nickel and cobalt, for instance, back to mine. Furthermore, we have found for our eLNO manufacturing sites renewable electricity. So we will power our plant by 100% renewables. Furthermore, for our plant in Finland, where we'll talk about a minute in more details, we have agreed with our partner Finnish Mineral Groups to prove a new innovative technology to treat the byproduct sodium sulfate in a recycled way and not to pump it into the deep water. Furthermore, we are going to explore green supply chains and further manufacturing technologies like heat recovering to further improve the carbon footprint of our eLNO manufacturing. In terms of the supply chain, we have entered into strategic supply chain contracts for raw materials with our partners SQM for lithium hydroxide and Nornickel in Europe to source nickel and cobalt from the refineries in Harjavalta, Finland, and in the Kola region in Russia. In Vaasa, which is our latest announcement, we will establish our second eLNO manufacturing, and we will do this with our partner Finnish Mineral Groups together in terms of the co-development of the integrated sodium sulfate treatment solution. And furthermore, we will also explore the pre-treatment technology of nickel and cobalt sulfates. In general, and this is how I would like to close my talk, is the footprint basically of our ELO manufacturing assets, which we will have soon in Europe. In Poland, close to the city of Konin, we will have our first ELO manufacturing capacity of 10,000 metric tons from 2022 onwards. And in Finland, in Vaasa, as I just have outlined, we will have 30,000 metric tons capacity from 2024 onwards. Furthermore, our plants are supported by the technology centers in Oxford and in Billingham, and beside our LFP Battery Technology Center in Moosburg in Germany. So the key takeaways today are Johnson Matthey position in the battery value chain is focused on the delivery of high performance cathode materials, such as our nickel-rich material ELO. And our strategy and vision for a sustainable battery value chain in Europe is underpinned by the 3 pillars: technology, sustainability, and supply chain. Thank you very much for listening and happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Christian and Stian. The raw materials that go into the battery cells are extremely important to realize the value creation in total. To learn a little bit more about this, we have Professor Daniel Müller from the the Norwegian University of Technology and Science in the Department of Industrial Ecology. And Daniel will explain a little bit more on the importance of the material flows through the value chain and how it will be developing in such an expanding market as the battery cells. So I leave it to you, Daniel.
My name is Daniel Müller. I'm a professor in industrial ecology at NTNU, and I'm going to talk about the use of material flow analysis in the battery industry. This presentation has 3 key messages. First, MFAs are used to map and simulate systems of material stocks and flows. Second, LIPs form complex dynamic systems that are difficult to control due to many wanted and unwanted side effects. Third, understanding these systems is useful for informing policymakers and businesses on sustainable and competitive strategies. Batteries are regarded as an opportunity for both mitigating climate change and businesses in the LIP sector. At the same time, LIPs are a source of concern for sustainability. What about carbon emissions related to battery production or the child labor involved in cobalt mining in Congo? And they're a source of concern for the competitiveness of European businesses. Europe is dependent on imports of battery raw materials and/or batteries, while Asian competitors tend to have better integrated, shorter and safer supply chains. The EU and several EU countries have therefore proposed or introduced a number of policies aimed at addressing these issues. For example, through requirements for reducing the carbon footprint of batteries, a high recycled content, a long lifetime, a rapid phase out of fossil fuel vehicles, or policies to ensure an unbroken supply chain in Europe and to achieve high recycling rates. I would like to show you now that these policies and goals are, despite good intentions, often competing and hindering each other. We do this through an analysis of the LIP system throughout the supply chain, the use of LIPs in vehicles and stationary applications, and end-of-life management. This system is analyzed at 3 scales: Norway, the EU, and global. We distinguish 3 levels that are balanced: goods, such as vehicles, LIPs, and materials. And we look at different individual materials, including nickel, cobalt, lithium, aluminium, phosphorus, and graphite. I will illustrate now the use of MFA models with 2 examples: the maximum average recycled content and the supply of battery-grade nickel. This slide shows for the global LIP system how the average recycled content depends on the battery chemistry scenarios on the left and on the battery lifetime scenarios, for example, when batteries are reused on the right. Both cases assume direct recycling of spent batteries, which is not yet widely practiced. The left figure shows that the battery chemistry has a very high impact on the possibility to reach the recycled content targets, with exception for lithium, green, where the concentration of the batteries is relatively constant. This figure shows that the high recycled content may be impossible to reach depending on the development of the battery chemistry, independent of the performance of the recycling infrastructure. The right figure shows that the lifetime also has a very high impact on the possibility to reach the recycled content targets. In other words, stringent requirements for recycled content may be incompatible with extended battery lifetime or reuse. The second example relates to nickel, a key material for cathodes in most battery chemistries. Given the surge in battery demand, the capacity of battery-grade nickel production needs to be expanded massively in the coming years. There are three main production routes to achieve this. The sulfide to class 1 route, represented with a turtle. This route is slow and steady, very predictable and has good jurisdictional reliability. Carbon emissions of this route are approximately 7 to 10 tons of CO2 per ton of nickel produced. Second, the laterite leaching route, also called HPAL, represented with a rabbit. This route is fast but unreliable and has bigger environmental, social and corporate governance concerns. Carbon emissions of this route are significantly higher, at about 18 to 35 tons of CO2 per ton nickel. A third route is the sulfidization of nickel pig iron, represented with a steam train. This route has the advantage that it could be scaled up easily and very fast. However, the carbon footprint lies around 60 to 100 tons CO2 per ton nickel, thus about an order of magnitude higher than the sulfide to class 1 route. A fast increase in battery-grade nickel production capacity can become very expensive in terms of CO2 emissions and may result in a substantial problem shift from the use phase of vehicles to the battery production. The two examples illustrate that the fast penetration of EVs may be in conflict with the goals of a low carbon footprint, as well as with high recycled content. Another important conflict exists between the goals of high recycled content and high durability and reuse. High durability and reuse extend the lifetime and thus reduce the amount of material available for recycling. Resolving these conflicts requires a quantitative system understanding, thus further scenarios, and a political priority setting. Our aim is to develop a data infrastructure based on MFA that would allow government authorities and businesses to test alternative scenarios and to harmonize their efforts at sustainable and competitive strategies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daniel. So we are finishing off today. We have only a 3-minute part with Morten Halleraker from Hydro, which will explain how the developments are with Hydrovolt and also the joint battery initiative.
Good afternoon, battery friends. I would like to start by saying thank you to Innovasjon Norge, Battery Norway and Batman for inviting Hydro to give this update. Hydro is developing battery businesses with partners. We have mobilized a strong team that has access to all of Hydro's industrial capabilities. A new industry is being built in Europe, and deep knowledge how to industrialize innovations and build scale are in great demand. It is exciting to note that the Nordic countries are so well placed to succeed in this industry, an industry that is so important to bridge the gap from carbon to renewable energy. Let me first focus on battery recycling, where Hydro, together with Northvolt, have established the battery recycling company Hydrovolt. We do this in close cooperation with Batteriretur, the company which collects batteries from all over Norway. Hydrovolt is building a state-of-the-art crushing and recycling facility in Fredrikstad. And Hydrovolt is on track to become operational at the end of this year. We are early movers in the recycling industry for batteries. And we are well placed to take a leading European position in this industry, which will become a large industry and a crucial industry for sustainable batteries. The other business opportunity that I would like to highlight today is our joint battery initiative. We have joined forces with the Norwegian energy giant Equinor and the global tier 1 cell manufacturer Panasonic to evaluate the basis for a Norwegian gigaplant. We are now approaching mid-year 2021, which is when we will have the preliminary conclusions to the mapping exercise that we are jointly conducting. The Memorandum of Understanding sets out to answer 3 questions. First, is there sufficient demand for Panasonic's technology in Europe? Second, are the framework conditions in Norway competitive in a global and European perspective? And third, what would be the best location for a gigafactory? What I can say today is that we are on track with this work, and preliminary conclusions will be reached around mid-year. Thank you for the attention, and also thanks for the initiative to set the Nordic battery scene on the agenda.
Thank you, Morten. We're almost at the wrap-up. I would like to thank all the speakers today. It's been fun getting updates from some of the well-known projects in the Nordic ecosystem and newcomers. But before we leave you, we have a few announcements. As Jan mentioned from Business Sweden, Innovasjon Norge and Business Finland and Business Sweden and InnoEnergy are partnering on an upcoming webinar series in the fall named Nordic Battery Thursdays. Please contact me or your local TPO representative for more information and stay updated on our respective homepages. But there are more exciting things coming up in the near future, isn't there, Lars Petter?
Yes, I've said several times today that we are in Arendal, and although we are only us two, but the next events that are happening within the battery scene is also happening in Arendal. And first of all, there is a EU network meeting that will commence on June 28th. That will be a webinar. But then during the Arendals week, there will be actually several events, and probably more than what I'm explaining just now, but both on the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with different co-hosts. We are arranging a lot of activity for the battery industry. So with that, I think we say goodbye for today, and thank you for watching for the full day.
Thank you.